Welcome back. The Bronx Arts Ensemble, a nonprofit organization founded in 1972, has received funding from the city's Department of Cultural Affairs for over 4 decades. The organization's primary objective is to provide music and arts education to the Bronx while offering free performances to New Yorkers. However, given the recent budget cuts, the city's arts and cultural institutions, including the Bronx Arts Ensemble, could face significant challenges. Executive Director Judith Insell joins me to discuss how these cuts are affecting their mission. Judith, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Kibin. I'm so glad to be here to talk about this important subject.
Now, can you just, I gave a little bit of a background, but can you just tell us a little bit more about the Bronx Arts Ensemble and what programs you offer?
Bronx Arts Ensemble has grown to be a major force in the Bronx where we have equally live performances and arts education programs inside of public schools throughout the Bronx. And our live performances are also throughout the Bronx and under regular circumstances.
Now, I also want to add how amazing it is that we have an organization like this in the Bronx, because when we think about arts and culture and entertainment, we always think about maybe going to Manhattan or going to another borough. But it's so amazing that something like this is happening in the Bronx. But as we mentioned, unfortunately, there has been budget cuts that are affecting the work that your organization does. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, as I had mentioned, under regular circumstances, we are accustomed to serving about 20,000 people every year through our annual performances, live performances that take place throughout the Bronx, in every single part of the Bronx. We are usually in every single district throughout the entire borough performing. We are an organization that prides itself in being creative placemakers. Basically, we come to your neighborhood and we present the performances that are adapted to what each neighborhood is accustomed to. We are a culturally responsive organization where we have a lot of discussion with the different community leaders about what arts and culture is relevant to them. So with the recent budget cuts from the Department of Cultural Affairs, unfortunately, Bronx Arts Ensemble did not receive funding this year to do our valuable work for 20,000 people. So we've had to make adjustments. There was basically no way we weren't going to have performances. We've been in business since 1972. We've seen a lot of things happen in the Bronx. So this is just, I consider a hiccup in the life of the institution, where we have modified what we're doing. We are finding ways to have performances, and we are going to as many Bronx neighborhoods as we can possibly go to this year. I should point out that we have great support from some of the council members, particularly in the Bronx, to help us to get to their neighborhoods. So understanding that the Cultural Development Fund money that we usually rely on to go to the Bronx neighborhoods is actually not there this year. We've had certain council members provide us with allocations to make sure we keep going. We employ the musicians that come out and perform, who happen to be members of the local 802 union, part of the AFM, American Federation of Musicians. So we are a union organization as well. So we're making it work. The Department of Cultural Affairs will hopefully resume our funding after all these decided budget cuts are hopefully reviewed and realized that it makes a great impact on every community, that arts and culture needs to be funded.
Now, I understand that you talked about this situation a little bit more at the city council hearing. Can you tell us a little bit more about that experience and how did it go?
It was a very interesting experience. I've been down to City Council before to testify, but I have to say this is the first time I've ever been there where I've heard testifying coming from major institutions in the city like Lincoln Center and Carnegie Hall and Brooklyn Academy of Music, and us all going there and speaking about how every single one of our institutions had been cut in some way in funding, which was resulting in cuts in programming or even the termination of administrative positions. It's impacted the entire industry of arts and culture in New York City, and we all agree as the institutions that New York City is arts and culture. So it's kind of a bad thing to have us all suffering through these cuts together and trying to figure out how to go on with our work.
Now, I love that you mentioned that because when people think of New York City, they do think of the arts and culture. They think of like the shows and the music, and that's what brings so much life to the city. Can you just tell us a little bit more about the importance of, having just kind of that be a huge part of our identity in the city, but you could also kind of focus it a little bit more in the Bronx?
Well, I think it's pretty clear that the Bronx has amazing arts and culture. We have had movements come from this borough, in particular, the movement of hip hop, and even long before hip hop, there was lots of cultural music, vibrant music in different communities, and that's the one thing I think that has helped Bronx Arts Ensemble be around for like so many decades. It's over 5 decades we've been around because we actually work with the communities and support what the music and culture is of each community. So in the overarching scheme of arts and culture in New York City, I think all the cultural institutions are doing that. That's why people come, because if a tourist comes from somewhere else, they know about the vibrancy of all these different cultures coming together, and they can have amazing experiences here through the work that we provide in our institutions.
Now, how important are collaborations and partnerships in sustaining activities at the Bronx Arts Ensemble?
Well, they're pretty much everything right now. Our partnerships range from higher education partnerships. We have a new residency at the University of Mount St. Vincent that we started this fall. We've had relationships with other universities like Lehman and Borough Manhattan Community College, and Bronx Community College, and Fordham University. These are all relationships that have happened over the decades that we've been in existence. And we have some new relationships that have grown in the past few years. We have a very strong relationship now with the New York Philharmonic, where we have presentations where they come and collaborate with us in the Bronx, and also with the Metropolitan Opera as well. They come and collaborate with us here as well.
Now, can you talk about any upcoming events or initiatives that the Bronx Arts Ensemble has planned despite budget constraints faced by the organization? Because as you mentioned, you found ways to push through, and I love to hear that. So what events could people see coming up in the future?
I think we've done a pretty incredible job in actually making things happen where there seems to be no way to make them happen. So we actually have a lot of performances. We are kind of at the level of performing that we are used to, again, because of these council members. Council member Dinowitz, Riley, former council member Velasquez, with the support of council member Marmorato. We're going to all these districts, and we are also going to Councilmember Felice's district as well. The flip side of that is we're used to serving the entire Bronx, so we're not going to be in all the different areas that we normally go to. We have concerts that are coming up with collaborative institutions like Courtney's Stars of Tomorrow. We have two performances with them next week, actually, April 19th and 20th. We are back at University of Mount St. Vincent on May 5th for a collaborative performance with their art department. So it will be a multimedia experience. We have three big performances at the Mall at Bay Plaza, which is a
cool.
very great partner of ours. When we want to do something big, we go to the mall. We know everybody's there.
Right.
And so we're going to have our spotlight on three teaching artists that we have who will be doing performances and workshops and samba dance, Congolese drumming, and capoeira, which is a movement and music art form. And we'll be back at our two summer venues that are outdoors, which are Pelham Bay Park and Van Cortlandt Park, with a number of offerings. We have 7 performances scheduled. So this is like us
Right.
trying to be business as usual.
It sounds like you're doing it pretty well. There's so many events happening, and it's like, as you mentioned, in so many places that people are going. So I think just from what I'm hearing right now, you guys are still doing an amazing job. I'm curious to know, what are your hopes or expectations for the future funding of Bronx Arts Ensemble, both in the short term and long term?
Well, I'll say that we are hopeful that the city of New York will remember that we've been doing this work for so long. And just because we're trying to make things work now, the reality is that these are all in certain parts of the Bronx, and there are other populations in other parts of the Bronx that can't actually afford $2.90 each
Right.
way to come to them. So we come to their neighborhood, and so we need the support from the city to actually continue to come to all these different rich cultural neighborhoods and do our performances.
Well, I want to thank you so much for joining us and having this really important conversation and talking about the work that you do in our community. I appreciate it. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
To keep up with the Bronx Arts Ensemble, please go to their website at www.bronxartsensemble.org. We have to take a quick break. We'll be back with more Open after this.